time management courses, we're going to start this one with a picture of an animal. Do you know what sort of animal this one is? Yes, it's a sloth. And the reason I've given you a picture of a sloth is because a sloth is emblematic of a type of attitude to time management. That kind of, maybe. I'll just think about it. Perhaps it's not worth it. A kind of slothful attitude. In fact, as far as I know, there is only one animal that shares a name with one of the 7 deadly sins, and it's the sloth. And whilst sloths aren't lazy, they just move slowly because their nutrition is very poor, they do stand, in my mind, for one extreme of an attitude to time. Let's have a look at another animal. Do you recognise this one? Yes, it's a mayfly. And whilst there are many species of mayfly, all with slightly different characteristics, what most people know about a mayfly, and what is true for some species, is that they only live for a day. Imagine that. Imagine only living for a day. Everything that you want to do, everything that you want to achieve in your life. You want a good education, you want to get a good job, you want some great holidays, you want to visit Vietnam or South America or Canada or Europe. You want a high level, higher education from a great university, you want a fantastic job, you want a career to be proud of, you want to bring up children, you want to write a great novel, you want to have a fantastic garden and a wonderful home. All of those things, you've got to do them 24 hours, because at the end of that 24 hours you're dead. So for me, a mayfly is emblematic of another kind of attitude to time, that busy, rush, gotta do as much as I can attitude to time. So I suppose my question to you is this: are you a sloth or are you a mayfly? And you'll find in the materials that go with this lecture is a simple quiz. Now, this simple quiz is not scientific. It just gives you an indication of where you are on the sloth mayfly scale. But it does have a serious point to it. And that point links back to the research of a psychologist called Dr. Philip Zimbardo. And Philip Zimbardo has been researching people's attitudes to time, our time orientations. And they're wonderfully described in a fantastic book called The Time Paradox, which I can heartily recommend. Now, in The Time Paradox, Zimbardo talks about different attitudes to time. And the first attitude that he talks about is a past orientation. And people who are oriented to the past are always looking back. Now, it's important to note that we're not uniquely past oriented or indeed uniquely future oriented, which we'll talk about in a bit. We have a mixture, but people who are dominantly past oriented, past time oriented, can be oriented in a negative way towards the past. They're looking back always at their failures, what they failed to do, and for them their failures are constants in their lives. And so it's very hard for them to motivate themselves to do things, because what they always see is the risk of failing yet again. What's the point? On the other hand, people with a positive past time orientation are looking back at that rosy, wonderful past time. Things were so much better in the good old days. So much better that what's the point of doing anything now, because nothing will ever be quite as good. So people with a strong past time orientation are a bit like our sloths. They don't want to do too much for whichever reason. On the other hand, there are people who have a strong future time orientation. They're always looking to the future. They're busy, rush, got to get things done, investing for the future. They are hugely productive, and consequently, the people with the strongest future time orientations often exhibit the greatest measures of external success. They rise through hierarchies, they have good jobs, they earn good money, they live good lives. They have the material trappings of wealth and status. They brush their teeth and they floss regularly because they know they're going to need their teeth for a long life. The problem that people have with a strong future time orientation is they're always investing, they're never reaping the rewards of their investments. That's a job for people with a strong present time orientation. Now we know that some people with a strong present time orientation are always focused on the now, and they're busy doing things and enjoying things and never investing for the future. They're always late for things, they are hedonistic in their seeking after enjoyment and pleasure. They're rarely productive, but there's another present time orientation. And we know people who are able to savour the moment, whatever it is. They're not constantly seeking after pleasure, they're taking their pleasures from where they can find them. What's the secret? Zimbardo's conclusion, which I share reading his research, is that balance is the secret. A good healthy dose of positive pastime orientation leaves you feeling rooted, having memories to look back on fondly, lessons to learn to bring with you. A good healthy dose of future time orientation is valuable too. That means that you work for the future and you can invest your time well. You're productive and a contributor to society, but also a good healthy dose of present time orientation, which means that you can enjoy the fruits of your work, you can take time off and savour your experiences, and you can invest some of what you've earned in pleasure for yourself, your family and your friends. We all have a balance of past, present and future time orientations. To be successful in managing our time, we have to understand our natural attitudes to time and to start to shift them and to see what balance is going to bring us the most fulfillment. Too much future and you'll get success but no fulfillment. Too much present and you'll get happiness but not much material reward. Too much past and you may well be rooted and grounded, but you don't do very much. Not enough past and you don't know where you've come from. Time orientations are a great way to start thinking about how you use your time as a result of how you think about your time. But there's another very special version of present time orientation, and we'll look at that in the next video. Do you have tasks in your life that absolutely need to get done, but frankly, they're dull, they're boring, they're mundane? You don't want to be doing them, and when you're doing them, you're bored. In your home life, this may be things like washing up, doing the dishes, ironing, cleaning, tidying, domestic accounts, maybe gardening or mowing the lawn. In your work life, the typical things people tell me that really turn them off are filling out expenses, completing paperwork, doing accounts, regular routine things that are absolutely necessary, but fundamentally don't tax us and are dull. What's the secret? Well, it turns out there is a way to turn those activities from dull, mundane, boring activities that seem to take an age into stimulating activities that we can look forward to and get done very quickly and very effectively. And what it takes is a change in mindset about the way you do them. And the original work that led me to this conclusion was done by a psychologist called Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And he is a psychologist who studies a phenomenon with which I am sure you're familiar. And that phenomenon is called flow. Now, you recognise flow states from the way that you don't notice what you're doing. So think back. Have you ever been doing something? It may be work, it may be play, it might be a social activity. Often it's a creative activity like craft or maintenance or building something. And what happens is that you get so totally engrossed in this activity that time passes without you even noticing. So maybe 2, 3, even 4 hours pass and you don't notice that you're a bit cold, or it's too hot, or you're desperately thirsty, or you need to pop out. You don't notice until you finish the task, and then when you realise how long it's been, that's when your physiology starts to assert itself and your body becomes aware of its discomfort. These are what Csikszentmihalyi describes as flow states, and he also describes those as the optimum state of being for a human. During those flow states, there is nothing more we want in life. We are totally absorbed and totally content. We are happy. Wouldn't it be marvellous if we could transform filling out the accounts, filling out forms, ironing shirts, mowing the lawn, doing the dishes into flow state activities? Well, we can. Because Csikszentmihalyi tells us how. In studying flow states, he has found the 3 conditions that are both necessary and sufficient to turn an activity into a flow state activity. So let me tell you what those 3 conditions are. And the first of them is that you need to have a very clear goal. You need to know very clearly what it is you are trying to achieve so that you have a target, an objective, an aim. And that aim has to be compelling to you. Compelling and meaningful. You have to see what the point is. Now, once you've got an aim, the second criterion is that that goal and that task has to be challenging to you. You have to make it difficult. The reason why we get bored when we do things is because we have spare mental capacity to think about other things, like how bored we are, what we want to do tomorrow, what we forgot to do last night. So while we're thinking about that, we're not fully engaged in the activity, we're not in flow states. But the other problem comes when the activity is too difficult, it's too taxing, and therefore we are constantly aware of the risk of failure. We are constantly on the edge of panic. So we can't get into a flow state because we're hyper aware of what we're doing. Flow states happen in that beautiful sweet spot between too easy and too difficult, where we are right at the edge of our capabilities and maybe a little bit beyond, because at that point our entire attention is taken up with doing the job and doing it well. And when our total attention is taken up with doing the job and doing it well, that's when we are wholly absorbed by it. The third criterion for falling into a flow state is that we need constant feedback on our performance. We need to be able constantly to monitor how well we are doing, and if we're not performing at the level we want to perform at, then we can tweak our performance. We can tweak the way we're doing it to get a better level of performance. So think back to the examples that crossed your mind when I asked you if you'd ever fallen into a flow state. And I'm sure you will recall having a clear objective in mind. Doing something that was taking all of your attention because it was difficult, but not too scary. And finally, you constantly knew how well you were doing and were able to change your performance in order to do a little bit better. And the manufacturers of computer games know this stuff, because think of the way that computer games work. You have a clear objective, whether it's going around a track in a certain time, shooting a certain number of aliens, rearranging blocks into a certain shape. Secondly, they're difficult. Computer games are difficult. But what happens when you start to master a computer game? It recognises that. It then stops the game, awards you more points, and then trips you into a new level, which is more difficult. So just as you're about to fall out of a flow state because it's becoming easy, the game senses it, keeps you in the flow state by making it more difficult. And the other thing games do, of course, is they constantly give you feedback on your performance. They give you feedback with symbols, visible symbols, with sounds, and often with vibrations and haptic feedback as well. So you constantly know what you're doing well and what you're not doing. So let's apply this to ironing, to form filling, to mowing the lawn. What do you have to do? You have to be very clear about what your goal is and why it's important, if not to you, to your organisation or to your family. Secondly, you have to set yourself targets that are demanding. So instead of, well, I suppose I better fill out these forms, I'm going to fill out these forms perfectly and I'm going to do it in under half an hour. And finally, you need to be constantly aware of how you're doing. I'm mowing the lawn and this bit of the lawn is looking immaculate, but that edge is a little bit raggedy, so I'm going to go over and do it again. If you can create flow states for yourself at will by understanding these three criteria, then even the dullest of tasks are things that you can look forward to. And even if you don't look forward to, at least you can do them quickly, efficiently and well, and enjoy the experience of doing so. It's important to note, however, that there is one danger of flow states. You have to choose your time well. Don't allow yourself to get into a flow state 15 minutes before you're due at a meeting, because during flow states we're not aware of the passing of time. Flow states are dangerous when used at the wrong time. So be aware of how much time you've got available, and when you have a substantial task to do and enough time to do it well, then that's the time to craft a flow state by focusing on your goal, setting yourself demanding targets and monitoring your progress as you go.